colostrum indicates the initial milk from the mother's breast given to the baby.
Hello and welcome to Dr. Story, everyone. The euphoria created by a newborn is certainly inexplicable. The art of parenthood is born along with the child. However, there are so many things one needs to know before this neonatal period begins about sleeping, breastfeeding, moods, and many more to get through those first few weeks. To help us transition smoothly, we have with us Dr. A.G. KARTHIKEYAN, an accomplished medical practitioner and a fellow of the prestigious Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health, United Kingdom. He worked in the UK for 12 years in the National Health Service, and his qualifications include MD Pediatrics from the Tamil Nadu Dr. MGR Medical University in 2001, MRCPCH in 2004, Fellowship in Neonatology at Liverpool and Leeds, UK, earning him the award of FRCPCH in 2010. His vision is to bring affordable and high-quality medical care to the reach of the common person in his homeland, brought him back to Chennai 10 years ago. From this fervor was born NRG Specialty Hospital at Ramapuram, Chennai. It's a great pleasure to be in conversation with you, Doctor. A warm welcome to Dr. Story.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice meeting you all through this YouTube channel. A special thanks to MyCare Health for arranging this interview. Thank you.
So, Doctor, just after delivery, what do you recommend in the first few hours for the newborn?
See, the first thing is what we say as the golden hour. So you might have heard of golden hour in, for example, in accident victims. When they say the first hour is the most important hour to save a person's life after an accident. Similarly, the golden hour in newborn babies should be spent trying to establish breastfeeds for the baby. So the first thing is just after the baby is born, try and place the baby with the mother. Don't separate the baby and the mother as long as the mother is physically stable. Don't try to separate the baby and the mother. Try to give the baby to the mother, place the baby on the mother's breast and encourage to breastfeed. Because once you miss this golden hour, the babies tend to become a bit more sleepy and they get tired and they tend to fall asleep. So the chance to breastfeed early is missed up. So this creates a sort of a perpetual cycle where the baby becomes more and more tired, unable to breastfeed. So hence the golden hour is very important for breastfeeding the baby.
So how long does the baby takes to adjust to the day and night schedule?
See, that's a very good question. It's not something that is easy to answer. I'll tell you the reason behind it. So when the baby is in the mother's womb, so normally as the mother is awake during the day, walking around, or she might be working at home, so the baby is sort of bouncing and has a very gentle rocking movements inside the mother's womb during the day. So they spend most of the time sleeping during the mother's daytime. So at night when the mother is sleeping, when everything is quiet, that's the time when the baby wakes up and starts becoming active. So this is what happens inside the womb for 9 or 10 months. Okay. So once the baby is born, it's very difficult for the baby to adjust to day and night straight away. So this pattern tends to continue. So that's why you see many mothers saying that the babies are crying during the night time and asleep during the daytime, because that is what they've been doing for the last few months. So that continues even after birth. So we cannot change that. We just need to let go of the schedule for a day and night for the baby in the first 1 or 2 months. Maybe from the 3rd month onwards, we need to establish a bedtime routine for the baby. So this can be done in a few ways. For example, make sure that the house is quiet after 8 or 9 o'clock at night time, so that the baby knows that it's time to sleep. So switch off the light in the baby's room, make sure there are no noises or any stimulation for the baby, and put the baby to sleep. probably you can also give a bath to the baby just before bedtime, so that the bathing period indicates to the baby that it's time to sleep. So they generally get relaxed, put some relaxing music for the baby, soothing music for the baby. Establish a bedtime routine so that the babies understand that this is the time when we need to settle down to sleep. So gradually over a period of time, say by the third or fourth month onwards, the day-night cycle establishes for the baby, and usually it takes this much time, at least about 3 to 4 months, for the day and night pattern for establishing in babies. So until then, parents have to be patient. So they just have to go along with the baby, but make sure that you establish a routine. So that's how we need to teach the baby that there is a difference between day and night, and they need to sleep at night and be more active during daytime.
All right. Okay. And should they stay in like open normal temperature or the air conditioners? What's better for them?
See, it depends on which part of the country you are. Say if you are in a place where it's really cool at night time, say in a hill station or in a very temperate climate, it's better not to use the air conditioner or normal room temperature. The ideal room temperature for babies is around 25 degrees centigrade. So this is what you need to aim at. So if it's too cold outside, there is no need absolutely for an air conditioner, because the room temperature will be around this value of around 25 degrees centigrade. But if you're living in a place like Chennai, where it's extremely hot now, I'm talking from Chennai, so it's extremely hot now. So your room temperature is way above 25 degrees centigrade. So in those cases, I think there is nothing wrong in keeping the baby comfortable with an air conditioner, but make sure that the air conditioner settings are such that the room temperature is maintained at around 24 to 25 degrees centigrade. It shouldn't be very cold. And the second thing is, don't keep the baby under the direct throw of air from the air conditioner. So the blast of air from the air conditioner shouldn't be hitting the baby directly. So place the baby slightly away from the air conditioner in the same room, but don't let the throw of air hit the baby's face. So that's one thing. The second thing is, many parents do not clean the AC. So the AC filter needs to be serviced and cleaned. Otherwise, there is a lot of dust particles which can circulate in the room, and this can cause problems to the baby, especially in slightly older babies and children. So make sure that you clean the air filters and service the AC before you let the baby sleep in an air-conditioned room.
When we talk about sunlight, how beneficial or harmful is direct sunlight for the baby?
See, direct sunlight in short periods of time is extremely beneficial for the baby. So as you all know, that vitamin D is essential for the baby's bone, not only bone, for a host of other activities. So one way of getting vitamin D naturally is from sunlight. So when the sunlight hits the skin, it synthesizes vitamin D, and that helps in the body to store up vitamin D levels. So what I generally advise parents is expose the baby to sunlight early in the morning, say around 6:30 or 7, gentle sunlight. So before the heat starts up increasing. So the baby can be placed just with a nappy on, expose as much of the skin as possible to natural sunlight, say for about 20 or to a maximum of about 30 minutes in the morning, usually for about between 6:30 to 7:30 a.m. in the morning. So many parents do ask me, can I do that in the evening? The problem in the evening, generally the temperature gets very heated up during the evening because there is sunlight throughout the day. So the natural environment is very hot in the evening when compared to the morning. So, and babies can get very uncomfortable if you're exposing them to sunlight in the evening. So the best time to expose them to natural sunlight in short periods of time is early morning hours, which is extremely beneficial for the baby.
All right. And what about the ambient lighting that we have in the rooms generally? Does those kind of lighting negatively affect their eyes?
Not necessarily. Any soft lighting is acceptable for babies. As I mentioned to you earlier, you asked me a very pertinent question about day-night schedule for babies. So babies need to be exposed to light during the daytime for them to understand that there is a difference between daytime and the light should be switched off and the room should be dark at night. So they need to understand this difference. So baby needs to have some sort of natural lighting or soft Indian lighting in order to differentiate, get their rhythm to differentiate between day and night. So it's perfectly acceptable to have soft lighting in the room, but they should not be exposed to very bright lights or flashing lights in the first few months of life.
All right. And when we talk about, once the baby is born, we all are very excited to take selfies, clicking baby's picture. How is it good or bad in the first few days itself?
Anything in excess is bad. As with many other things, anything in excess is bad. So generally, my advice is don't overdo taking selfies. So in fact, there are some case reports in the medical literature which says that baby's retina has been damaged by taking a lot of selfies using a flash. So when the babies are exposed to flash from cameras, from smartphones, retinas are known to be damaged. So this has been reported in the medical literature. So anything excessive is harmful, definitely. So, but one or two selfies is fine for the baby if you want to show the baby's photo to your relatives or to your friends, or to have a memory of your baby in the first few days of life. A few selfies are fine, but don't overdo it.
Doctor, coming to the feeding, first, when to start the breastfeed and how to make sure that the baby gets enough milk?
We talked about the golden hour earlier. So ideally, breastfeed should be started in the first hour after the baby is born. So that's the best time when the baby is really active and the baby is hungry as well, coming through the delivery process. So that's the best time to actually feed the baby. Once the mother starts breastfeeding, you might hear many mothers complaining that I do not have enough milk. That's one of the commonest complaints mothers say after the baby is born in the first few days of life. So what I can definitely say that is I can reassure mothers saying that whatever milk you secrete is enough for the baby in the first 2 or 3 days of life. So many mothers, in fact, have only a few drops of breast milk getting secreted in the first few days of life. But these few drops of milk are much more nutritious, and they are also very high in protecting the baby from various diseases. We call this as colostrum. Colostrum indicates the initial milk from the mother's breast given to the baby. So this milk is very rich in proteins. So even a few drops of this provides a lot. Not only it has proteins, it has other immunological properties as well. Like it has got special cells to fight against infections, which can affect the baby in the first few days of life or first few weeks of life. So this colostrum is extremely important. So many mothers have cultural practices where they actually discard this colostrum. They think that this milk is not, the initial few drops are not used. So they have a cultural practice of discarding the colostrum. That should never. This is very important for the baby from immunity point of view.
Okay.
So I advise the mothers generally to feed colostrum as much as possible. Even a few drops are still okay. So babies have generally a very good amount of glucose reserves in their liver. So when they are born, nature has provided them with glucose reserves in their liver lasting for 2 or 3 days. So they don't even have to feed the baby. So even if there's no milk, there is enough glucose reserve in the liver, which gets utilized for the various functions of the body, like their heart function, kidney function, etc. So even without, we as adults wouldn't survive such long periods of time without intake of glucose. But babies can definitely survive the first few days with very little amount of glucose in their body. So if you are concerned, you always speak to your pediatrician, or if your baby has any symptoms, showing symptoms of feeding difficulties, you can always check with your pediatrician. But by and large, most of the babies, they manage with very little amount of milk in the first few days of life. So mothers need not panic. So that's what I'm trying to say. So once the first few days of life is completed, the mothers will automatically have more secretion. So that's how the hormones in their body work. So after the baby is born, the hormones prepare the mother's breast and the start secreting breast milk. It takes some time for the mother, especially the first time mother, for these changes to happen. So until then, even small amounts of glucose or colostrum is enough for the baby. So mothers need not worry that the baby is not getting enough milk.
All right. As you mentioned about this woman who doesn't lactate in the first few hours, what's the next course of action? Are there any natural methods that could aid the process, that could further accelerate the breastfeed?
There is a lot of myths surrounding this. Some various cultural practices are there which says that you need to give this particular type of food for the mother to lactate better. But scientifically speaking, there isn't any particular group of food which helps with lactation, which helps with increased breast milk supply. So in general, what we say is the mother needs to hydrate herself very well. She needs to drink plenty of water. She needs to drink a lot of milk. She needs to eat well and rest well. That is also important. The less stress helps with milk production. So the more the mother gets worried about milk secretion and becomes more stressful, the milk secretion reduces. So it becomes counterproductive. Stress in the mother becomes counterproductive for milk secretion. So we generally advise the mother to rest well, drink well, eat well, and the most importantly, place the baby and allow the baby to suck from the breast. So even if there is no milk coming from the breast, let the baby suck at the breast. So sucking is a very powerful stimulus for milk secretion. So keep the baby sucking every 2 to 3 hours, even if there is not much milk. By doing this, mothers will automatically have an increased amount of breast milk production. There are certain medicines available. You need to speak to your gynecologist or pediatrician to help with these medicines. But scientifically, they may or may not work. So the jury is still out there with these medications. But ultimately, it's the amount of hydration and eating well by the mother. Whatever food she has eaten during pregnancy, let her continue. There is no restrictions, or there is no special group of food to increase milk output. So the general advice is, if she has eaten something during pregnancy, that should be good enough for breastfeeding as well. So let her continue with that.
What about breast milk preservation? Is that right? Does the preservation in any way reduce the nutrient content of the milk?
Okay, so that's a very pertinent question, because we do see a large number of mothers going to work these days. So we are back from the pandemic has reduced quite significantly, and more mothers are going back to work. So this is one of the common questions we get asked, whether we can store milk if somebody else can offer the milk, breast milk to babies. So it is very much possible. Preservation, if done properly, is very good, and it's not as difficult as it's said to be by many people. I'll give you some practical tips for preserving breast milk. So once you feel that you have to return to work, identify somebody at home who can feed the baby through a cup, whatever milk you express. So you start expressing milk, and you need to refrigerate them. Say if you are going to work in the morning and returning in the evening, you can express a quantity of milk, say about 100 ml or 120 ml of milk, depending on your baby's needs. Just by leaving this milk in room temperature, away from sunlight, you cannot place them in a place in a window where there is direct sunlight hitting the milk. So if you place it away from sunlight in a cool, dry place, you can preserve this milk easily for about 4 to 6 hours without using any additional equipment. So just use a stainless steel container and store it in a cool, dry place. And this can be used for about 4 to 6 hours. So another member of the family can safely feed the baby using a cup. Generally, we don't recommend bottles. So that's why I keep saying cup feeding. If you have enough milk, and if your milk secretion is increasing, you can store it in a refrigerator. So you can either use stainless steel containers. Special plastic containers are available. These needs to be BPA. So these plastic containers can be stored in the refrigerator compartment. Milk can be stored for 48 hours using these containers, provided there is no interruption in power supply. So if your milk secretion is much more, you can actually use the same containers in the freezer compartment of the fridge. Once you keep in the freezer compartment, you can safely store milk even for 3 to 6 months, as long as there is no power supply issue. So that's the major limitations in our country. So because once you store milk and then the power supply goes off, if there is no backup electricity in the fridge, the milk tends to melt. So once the milk melts, we cannot refreeze it. It's not safe. It loses many of the nutritious value, like you mentioned. It becomes unsafe for babies. So as long as there is uninterrupted power supply, there is no harm in storing breast milk. No, I just wanted to tell you as to how to use the milk. Once you store it, the storing bit is the easy one, but how can you get the milk from the refrigerator and feed to the baby? Obviously, the milk in the refrigerator is at a very low temperature. It's very cold. You cannot give it to the baby directly. So what you can do is just place that container in warm water for about 20 to 30 minutes. Let it warm up a little bit, and then you can feed the baby. The things to avoid are, do not heat the milk. So some parents ask me this, whether they can boil breast milk in order to get the temperature up. Never do that. Do not microwave. That's not advised as well. What to do if you're storing it in the freezer compartment? If the milk is frozen, so you can do one of two things. So either if there is no urgent requirement for milk, you can take the container of the frozen milk from the freezer compartment and leave it in the refrigerator compartment overnight. So the milk gradually melts, but still remains in the refrigerator compartment. The next day, whenever the baby wants to feed, you can simply take the milk, and as I mentioned to you before, you can just place the container in warm water for about 20-30 minutes and then feed it. Do not feed the cow. If you want it urgently, say if the baby is crying and then you want to melt the milk, the frozen milk, what you can do is you can take the container and show it in warm running water for about 20 minutes. So that will help them to melt the cow. And then you can feed the baby after that. So there are so many advances now, and the science is supporting that breast milk, by doing these things, storing properly, we can reach most of the nutritive value of the breast milk. So that can be adopted by working mothers, and the value of value from breast milk will be maintained.
That's an amazing suggestion from you. What about water intake? Is it appropriate to give them? Like, if yes, then what, and are there any specifics to be considered?
See, newborn babies, surprisingly, they do not need water. So we don't advise water for newborn babies. I'll tell you the reason. Breast milk has about 75 to 80% water. So whatever milk mother is producing, the majority is the chemical composition is water. So the remaining 20 to 25% is fat, proteins, and few other components, but the majority is water. So if the mother is giving, say, about 500 ml of milk in a 24-hour period in the first few weeks of life, the baby is already getting about 350 to 400 ml of water. So why do you want to give extra water? There is no need for it. So scientifically, there is no need for water for a breastfeeding baby because breast milk has enough water. So if at all you feel that the baby is not is getting very hot and not and the environmental temperature is very high, just increase the number of feeds given to the baby. Maybe an extra feed a day will provide so much of water for the baby, extra amount of water for the baby, rather than giving water directly. By doing this, you not only give water, you also give more proteins and fat for the baby to grow, which helps in weight gain for the baby. So my advice is, do not give water. Instead, increase the amount of breast milk you are giving for the baby.
Okay. Once they are fed, is it required for the babies to be burped after that?
See, burping is definitely helpful, but the problem is not all babies like to be burped. So burping in a way is helpful because it tends to reduce the amount of vomiting after a feed. It tends to, because most of the babies, when they swallow milk, they swallow a little bit of air as well. So that comes naturally. So when they swallow milk, they swallow some air as well. And it is this air which sort of fills up the stomach, and it causes discomfort and then vomiting. So by the purpose of burping is to let this air out. So if possible, after the feed, it's good for mothers to burp their baby. So normally we advise them to have the baby on their shoulder like this and burp them. Or some babies will prefer a different posture, like they tend to, they like to lie flat on their tummy on the mother's lap, get started on their back. So that is another form of burping, but the most common form is over the shoulder burping. Mothers can do that. Some babies do not burp in spite of burping. They just do not get the air out. But that's pretty rare. If the baby is uncomfortable with burping, the mothers shouldn't force the baby to do that. As long as they are not vomiting and they are digesting their milk and gaining weight, burping is not mandatory, but it is good to have it.
Talking about hiccups, are there like procedures or something that parents can put in place to, help to prevent hiccup? Once for a while it becomes incessant, and you think the baby is getting irritated out because of the hiccups. So are there any methods that they can use to cure, try and cure them?
Hiccups is something which is very natural. It is a reflex. So a reflex mechanism is sort of very involuntary. Even as adults, we can't recreate hiccups. It's just an involuntary movement. The same thing happens with babies. Generally, what I advise is hiccups in babies is not a sign or a symptom of any illness. So it's just a natural thing happening for a baby. So if the baby has hiccups, as long as the baby is not in discomfort, ignore it because it tends to stop within a few minutes. Or you can actually try and feed the baby during a hiccup. So many babies, once they start swallowing, the hiccup stops. So those two are the methods which can be adopted to reduce hiccups or to stop hiccups. But in general, I wouldn't worry about hiccups in babies.
All right. And now if you could guide us a little about the skin care.
Skin care, again, it's many parents are worried about the baby skin, especially during the summer months. I'll tell you what should be done and what should not be done for skin care. The first thing is when babies are born, their first bath should be given after 24 hours. So that's something which, because many babies come with a naturally a protecting layer of paste called as vernix. So this actually helps the babies to retain heat. So do not remove this by bathing the baby immediately after birth. So the first bath is usually given after 24 hours after birth. Subsequently, you can bath the baby at least once a day or even preferably twice a day. So as I mentioned earlier, for a bath routine, for a night routine to happen, you need to make sure you do a bath at night time before the baby goes to sleep. So one bath in the morning and one bath at night time is perfectly acceptable. There is no need for bathing the baby in hot water. The water should be clean. So you can heat the water, let it cool down naturally, and then use that water to bathe the baby. So there is no need to use hot water, which can be very uncomfortable for babies, especially in a warm climate. The third thing is about the use of soap. Do not use adult soaps for babies. Whatever the quality of the adult soap, do not use it for babies. There are special soaps which are acceptable for babies because many of the babies' skin is very delicate and they tend to have certain chemical reactions in the skin which can be damaged with the soap. So always use baby soaps. Do not use powders, irrespective of the quality of powders, whether it's baby powder or general use. Do not use them for baby skin. Powder will make things worse for baby skin. Other thing which parents ask us is, can we apply oil for babies now? So the oil is perfectly acceptable for babies. So normally we advise that parents can apply a bit of coconut oil, massage the baby's skin well, and then start it. People ask us whether we need to go for almond oil or virgin olive oil. My advice is just use oil which is available locally. Coconut oil does the job very well, and it's less expensive as well compared to almond olive oil. So apply the coconut oil. The first few weeks of life, try and apply it below the shoulder level so that the oil doesn't enter into the baby's nose, or don't apply on the baby's head as well. Because when you give bath to the baby, the oil can enter into the baby's nose and can cause breathing difficulties. So once you apply the oil, you can do a gentle massage for the baby. Then wait for about 25 minutes. Then you can give a bath for the baby. So oil bath is absolutely fine. Once the baby is a bit more older, say maybe about 6 or 7 months old, you can start applying oil to the hair as well, and just before a bath. The other important issue parents are concerned is about the use of diapers. Generally, I wouldn't advise diapers for babies, but try and use just cotton pants for babies. The problem with diapers is that it tends to retain urine as well as retain heat in babies. So this causes the skin to get damaged usually, and rashes appear in the nappy area. So generally, I advise parents not to use diapers. The other mistake parents do is using commercially available wipes to clean the nappy area. Again, all commercially available wipes, they're coated with chemicals. And this can also so my best advice is just use clean water, dip cotton wool in clean water, and clean the baby's private parts. So do not use wipes for cleaning baby's private parts. So these are some of the common tips which we can adopt to help with the baby's skin care.
And what about, this is also very common, putting kajal in their eyes, some old, age-old homemade kajal. Are these good for their eyes?
Okay, now you're going to get me into trouble with many mothers. Because a lot of them use kajal and it's very difficult to convince. I think it's probably a cultural practice in many parts of India to apply kajal for the baby's eyes. As a doctor, I wouldn't advise kajal for baby's eyes. I'll tell you, there are two problems with that. The first problem is many of the kajal which is available commercially contains lead. Lead can interfere with baby's brain development, can interfere with baby's blood cells, causing anemia. There are a lot of issues caused with lead. And one of the components of kajal is lead. So even applying to baby's skin or to the eyelids, it can get absorbed into the body and will cause various problems. The other issue is when a mother applies kajal to the baby's eyes, her hands could be dirty. So every time she has an opportunity to wash her hands and then apply kajal. So what happens is that the dirt in the hand gets passed on to the baby's eye, and that can cause eye infection as well. So those two are the reasons why we tend to advise not to apply kajal to the baby's eyes. A lot of mothers, they encounter argument, they say that, oh, we have prepared this kajal at home. So it's not a commercially available one. It is very cheap. See, I cannot really vouch for that. We don't know where the source of the ingredients for kajal come from, whether it contains lead or not. I cannot vouch for that. So my general advice is not to apply that. If at all you want to do that, do it away from the eyes. Just a little bit of some people do that as well. So just a little bit of kajal in the forehead or on the cheek is fine. If you want to continue as a cultural practice, it's fine. But applying kajal to the eyes, I don't think it adds any value to the baby in terms of baby's health of the eyes or the general health. It can be counterproductive in many ways.
Okay. All right. Also, doctor, there are times the babies cry and become cranky incessantly. It's happening. So how do we comfort them? Is there any comfortable posture for them so that they smoothen and keep at ease?
In general, there is no one posture which keeps babies comfortable. What you mean to say is colic. See, we count this as colic. It's spelled as COLIC. So sometimes babies gets affected with a bit of gas or flatulence, as we call it, and then they start throwing up. There is no particular medicine or any posture to prevent this. We can try out a few things. Say, for example, once we start crying, we can smoothen the baby down by getting the baby to sleep, to listen to soft music. Try not to stimulate the baby by showing them videos or many parents do that. They tend to show their smartphones to babies when they're crying, but it actually makes things worse. So what you need to do is actually quieten them, not to stimulate them in crying. So make sure you take them to a dark room and try and listen to some soothing, gentle, soft music. Try putting them to sleep during that time. There are certain medicines which can be given to reduce flatulence. Discuss with your pediatrician about your baby's condition before using these treatments. Because your baby could be crying due to something else and you can assume that it's due to flatulence. So always check with your pediatrician at least the first few times before you start medicines. With regards to posture, the cheapest posture is again tapping them on by putting the baby over the shoulder and tapping their back. Sometimes with crying, and it also helps with burping, as I mentioned earlier. The other thing is to rock the baby gently. That can also reduce the crying episodes in babies. So each baby is different, and parents have to try out a combination of these, which may or may not work for individual babies.
Well, such an amazing, enriching discussion. Thank you so much for your time. We couldn't thank you enough, actually, for taking out this much time for us. And I firmly believe our viewers will greatly benefit from this talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I wish to thank you as well and your associates for organizing this. I would like to thank the viewers also for patiently watching this. Thank you so much.